Tips with Tony. Tips with Tony. All about nutrition from your favorite dietitian. Everything you need to digest in your mind. Tips with Tony. Tips with Tony. Making you healthier one bite at a time. With Tony. Woo.
Hello and welcome to the Tips with Tony podcast. I'm Tony Marinucci, your registered dietitian, helping you get healthy one bite at a time. I'm very excited for you guys to meet my very next guest. It is a colleague of mine. She's also a registered dietitian. Her name is Elaina, and she specializes in helping people with eating disordered or disordered eating that also might also be athletes. So I think that's a really great conversation that we're going to get in today. And then also just for people who are looking for just general wellness, healthy tips, and maybe you have a weight management goal, we're going to teach you more of like the non-diet approach to go about that. So I'm super excited to have Elaina here to elaborate on that further. So Elaina, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. I'm very excited.
We're excited to have you. So the first question I always ask my guests is for you to introduce yourself by saying who you are, what you do, and most importantly, why you do what you do.
Yeah, so my name is Elaina Efird. I am a registered dietitian. I specialize in eating disorders and in athletes, like you just mentioned. I am currently the lead dietitian at a company called the Calm Clinic, and we have a couple of different locations, and what we really focus on is, of course, working with individuals with eating disorders and athletes with eating disorders and sort of a non-diet approach to weight management. But what's also really important about what we do is we work with metabolism testing. So we have all of our clients do a metabolic test and a body composition analysis so that we can really see what's going on internally and how your body is responding to maybe whatever eating disorder behaviors someone is using. Mm-hmm. And I got into this position of really just being a dietitian in general because I love food. That was the first thing that got me into it. And then more specifically working with athletes and with eating disorders, I realized that there was a need for it. So a lot of times people aren't talking about eating disorders or disordered eating, or maybe even disordered eating is praised in an unintentional way. And I noticed that during my dietetic internship. So I really wanted to specialize in those two categories.
Yeah. So before we get into the meat of the conversation, I think it's really important for us to specify or identify the difference between an eating disorder and disordered eating. I know that's like probably like a bigger question, but just maybe like a one or two liner of something that it's pretty, there's a difference. Like, where's the line?
Yeah, of course the line is a little bit gray, but an eating disorder is diagnosable based on what's called the Diagnostic and Statistics Manual 5, which is how you diagnose like a mental illness. And usually it comes along with some severe psychiatric things going on, for the best way to summarize that. So it's not just someone who is restricting their intake or not just someone who's binging. There's some other things going on there with how much time they're spending thinking about food in their body. It's really taking over a good majority of their life to the point where they might not even be able to attend school or work or whatever. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Disordered eating is sort of bits and pieces of that, where someone may be obsessed with food, but they're able to sort of let that go sometimes. They may never eat carbs, but they'll eat anything else. There's little sort of behaviors like that, but it's not really full blown into where it's taking over every aspect of their life.
Yeah. And so as you working with eating disorders, I have a few questions about this. So I think the first question is, I think when people think eating disorder, I think like the first thing that comes to their brain is like anorexia, right? But we know that there's many different types of eating disorders. What are the most common eating disorders that you see, and what are the differences between them?
Well, actually the most common, where most people fall, is what's called OSFED, which is other specified feeding or eating disorder. And usually people would fall into that category if they are severely restricting their intake, but maybe aren't underweight. Or maybe they're binging, but they're not binging with the frequency that would classify someone as a binge eater. And so what ends up happening is they get lumped into other specified feeding and eating disorders. So a good majority of eating disorders actually fall into that category, which I won't go off on a tangent here, but can sometimes be a little bit invalidating, right? Because people feel like they don't truly have an eating disorder, even though they do.
Yeah, it's kind of like IBS. Like if anybody has ever had like issues with their stomach or their bowels, it's like if it's not Crohn's, or if it's not celiac, or if it's not something like very obvious, it's like you get thrown into this category like, oh, you have IBS. It's kind of like, and then it's like, well, what do you do? Like there's like a lot of things you can do. It's harder to pinpoint. So I understand that, actually. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, so that's actually the most common. And then just to go over it for the purposes of going over it, there is, of course, anorexia nervosa, bulimia nervosa, and then binge eating disorder, which is now diagnosable. It used to actually not be, but it is. And amongst those, also, there's some overlap. There's individuals who maybe are primarily dealing with anorexia, but do still use some behaviors that would fall under bulimia and sort of compensatory behaviors. And there's also individuals who are trying to restrict their intake but end up binging. So there's a lot of overlap between all of these diagnoses and how eating disorders present.
Yeah, and I'm curious, in your practice, how many, I'm curious. I'm going to just say the question before I like go on tangent as well, but like how many people fall into specific categories, maybe like anorexia, and they're not underweight. I mean, they're not underweight, but then also binge eating, and they, are in a quote unquote normal sized body. Like, I think because of the DSM, it's sometimes harder to really truly diagnose, but like, what do you in your practice, do you see a lot of things that it's like almost like they would be diagnosed if they just were like under a certain weight or something? You know what I feel like I'm asking like a bazillion questions because I have so many things in my head right now. But like, do you see that where somebody would normally be classified as an eating disorder, but because they don't fall into a specific weight category, they're almost taken as less serious?
All of the time.
Okay, yeah, that's the question.
Yeah.
All the questions.
That's the majority. The majority is someone who doesn't meet the, frankly, kind of subjective weight criteria for that eating disorder.
Yeah, in both spectrums. I think someone looks at someone in a quote unquote normal body size, and if we want to use BMI standards, right? And then would assume that they have a healthy relationship with food, or even just the athletes I'm sure that you come across, right? I think someone looks at someone who an athlete, and this is also an assumption, the majority of athletes do have a more athletic build, right? So if they see someone with abs, they assume, oh, that person is a healthy person. Right. And then on the flip side, it's like just because someone's in a bigger body, they might assume that that person's an unhealthy person. So I'm sure you probably see a ton of all of those things.
Always. I'm even with as many people as I've worked with, I always see different cases, different ways that things present, different looks of individuals, but may fall under a different eating disorder category. It's all over the place. And yeah.
Yeah. So what are some of the common symptoms that you see in terms of disordered eating or eating disorders, and how can they almost go unnoticed in today's society? Because diet culture is it plays a big role in how we eat and how we behave. So I'm kind of curious what you've seen.
One of the big ones is, frankly, just dieting, going on and off lots of different diets, or someone who's constantly trying the newest diet. That doesn't always fall under the disordered eating or eating disorder category, but it's definitely a red flag. The other thing that is really, really common is sort of obsession with counting calories or just knowing what they're eating or what's in the food. So a very common thing that I see is that people cut out sort of the stereotypical, and I'm using air quotes, bad foods that are not bad, right? But people will cut out pizza and pasta and those types of things, and they get praised for it. Someone will say, oh, you have such great willpower. I'm so proud of you. I can't believe you're able to do that. When really they're doing it because they're terrified of eating that food, thinking that it's going to have a negative impact on their body. So that's a big one, but people get praised for it. I think another one that actually slips under the radar quite a bit is not eating out. Now, it's one thing if people don't eat out for like budget reasons or whatever, but avoiding social situations or not eating out can sometimes go, like, people praise it again, but really a lot of times they're doing it because they don't know what's in the food. They don't know how many calories it is, and it's sort of out of their control, but it very much goes unnoticed.
Yeah. And so I'm actually curious, we're talking a lot about food, but when someone who works with athletes, like, I feel like exercise also we get praised for, like, exercising a lot. Like, because I'm like reflecting back to when I was in high school and I was overweight and I was trying to get on varsity as a freshman, for volleyball and basketball. And I thought if I lost weight, I'd somehow have a greater chance of getting on the varsity team because I just thought my weight was the only thing holding me back. Right. And so I would come home from practice. Or tryouts, really. I would come home from tryouts, which are 2.5 hours. If you know anything about, like, athletics, then you're doing 2-hour tryouts. Your practices are 2.5 hours. You go to the gym, you do cardio, you do your practice, your drills, then you have to run a mile, then you have to, go to the weight room. Like, it's a lot. I would come home from that and I would exercise more. And I did get praised for it. Because I was working really, really hard. But really, I was obsessed with exercise and obsessed with hoping it was going to make me lose weight. Right. And so I'm curious what you've seen in either in your practice with athletes. Is that super common? Just in general, like, how does exercise play a role, or even just like fitness trends that you see on, like, social media and, like, TikTok and, Instagram? Like, how can that be sort of detrimental to someone's health or view on themselves?
Yeah, I mean, over-exercising, compulsive exercise is a huge one. And what it tends to happen is people think that they have to do super intense exercise for it to count. So that's a big one. And so people say that they're kind of, like you mentioned, working out or at the gym or whatever it is for 2 hours. And everyone's like, oh, great. Why does it need to be 2 hours?
Yeah.
The other thing is people are considering just going on a walk, not exercise, because they don't think it's intense enough. Or, like, not taking rest days and they just work out literally 7 days a week and don't budge on that. That's all stuff that gets praised. And you see it on social media all the time through people saying that that's just discipline. Like, that's how you get better. That's what you're supposed to do, when really you're not. Your body needs rest.
Yeah.
You're taking at least one rest day a week, at least. But that gets praised. And then, there's the whole 75 hard trend and things like that, where it's like, you have to follow exactly this. And if you don't, you have to start over. There's lots of mentality around that with both food and exercise that people can treat as discipline. As you
were talking about that, I'm sure you're familiar with, like, F Factor, the F Factor diet. So don't do it, guys. If you've never did it, it's not work. Don't even look it up. Like, literally, just don't even. It's the worst. It's basically everybody who's gone through it comes to see us after. Just so you know, like, so don't even try. But it's that mindset. It's like, oh, if you screw up, if you don't get past phase 1, you start phase 1 over again. I know so many people that have stayed in phase 1 forever because they can't, because it's impossible. It's ridiculous. It's not necessary. Like, and so that's the same thing. It's like with 75 hard with exercise. It's like your plan, whether it's whatever diet, whatever movement pattern, whatever thing you're doing, you have to let go of this idea of perfection. Because if you're constantly beating yourself up, 1, you're never going to get anywhere. And 2, like, life is flexible. Life is like we can't, and it's a lifestyle. That's a true lifestyle. Actually, let's go there if you want to, Elaina. One thing I love about Elaina, Elaina, do a quick shout out about where people can find you on TikTok and Instagram. Because she's, like, really good with her content. And I'm, like, excited to go into these questions.
TikTok is just my name, Elaina Efird, and then Instagram is basically the same, but it's EP as in Paige Efird. Both I post content that is very, we'll say honest.
So I'm gonna put those links in the show notes, so definitely go follow that. But as I'm talking about, like, what a true lifestyle change is, can we talk about, like, some marketing tactics that are out there by certain programs like Noom, Weight Watchers and like guys, and you guys know I just came out with a book. So my book is all about, it's called, Once Upon a Diet. It's all about how there's nothing good or bad. Everything has value if you use it correctly. But I think a lot of the problems with the marketing tactics of certain programs like Weight Watchers, Noom, freaking Optavia, like they tell you it's a lifestyle change, and it's like, what lifestyle do you want to live where you're eating out of Tupperware container and a shake and a bar and like one meal with quote unquote real food, but you don't even get to put a carbohydrate on there, and I don't understand how that's a lifestyle change. So can you mind speaking to that? Like, what do people need to look out for? Like, when it says lifestyle change, what do they need to, like, what's the subheading? Like, what are the red flags? Like, what are the things that, like, people really need to be understanding, like, before they try something? What do they need to almost, like, vet out?
Well, number one is the language that they're using. If they're referring to carbs or even alcohol, frankly, or a sweet as your treat, and you're only allowed to have that treat under certain circumstances, problem number one. Problem number two, and Noom does this, is classifying foods into one category or another. Lots of different diets do that. They just do it under a different way to sort of try to trick you, right? And then inevitably how they're doing that is purely based on caloric density. So they're going to say that nuts are a red food or a bad food or whatever because it's a lot of calories for a small amount. But nuts aren't bad. They're a great source of fat and protein in your diet, but it leads you to believe that you shouldn't be eating nuts. Even if you don't think that that's what it's doing, subliminally, that's what it's telling you. Yeah. So there's that. Yes. And then the other thing is, I always tell my clients, ask yourself how you would do this if you went on vacation. How would you do this if you went to go hang out at a friend's house? How would you do this if, I don't know, you were flying back from a trip and your flight got canceled and you had to stay in a hotel for a night and you were up to whatever food is around? If you can't follow it doing that, it's not a lifestyle change.
I love that. That's such a great question. I feel like I need to ask that question more often when we're, when asking someone like, can you do this on vacation? Because ultimately a healthy lifestyle is that, like exactly what you just said. A healthy lifestyle is something that you can do it wherever you are, whatever time of year. Like the holidays are coming, right? So we want the holidays. You shouldn't be on a diet or off a diet. You should just be living your life, enjoying the holidays, and just be taking care of your body in the best way that you can, in not in like this extreme way. Just like do for it.
It almost breaks my heart. I've had clients tell me that they've been on one of these programs and they packed all their little shakes into their suitcase. I was like, no. Yeah. Like, that's just... Yeah.
It's an obsession. Yeah. It's an obsession. I was there, though. Like, I'm not... And, guys, we're not saying... We've been there. We've seen it. We've done it. I mean, I'm speaking for myself, really. Like, it's why I became a dietitian. Because I was obsessed with food. Can you speak a little bit about orthorexia, actually? Because I was never, like, clinically diagnosed, but I'm sure... But I speculate that... That's probably more of what I had. When I got over the wanting to lose weight part, I still was obsessed with food and exercise. It was just in a different form. But can you speak a little bit about orthorexia? Because I feel like that's a more common eating disorder too that goes very unnoticed. Speaking of like our diet culture, diet-ridden society, when we get praised for eating well, quote unquote. Can you speak a little bit about that?
Yeah, so orthorexia is this obsession, and I use that word purposely, it's obsession with eating clean, and how the issue with it is that nothing ever gets clean enough, right? So what happens is people start to get obsessed with food labels and what's in a food to the extent where it might have, 2 more grams of carbs than they think it should. And then that doesn't fit into it being good enough for them to eat. And then from an exercise standpoint, it's kind of similar, right? It's that obsession with exercise that you have to be doing. Usually how people tend to lump it doesn't happen this way for everybody, but is they have to be burning a certain number of calories during that workout. And so that kind of falls under the orthorexia category. A lot of times orthorexia is logging calories and being obsessed with hitting an exact number every single day. And if you even go over by like 10, it's a travesty. But yeah, it's that obsession with cleaning and eating, and it goes unnoticed because, again, someone will be praised for like, oh my God, you're eating so many vegetables, or like, good for you for looking at the food label and avoiding X, Y, and Z. Mm-hmm. When really it's very, I don't even know the adjective that I want to use here, detrimental to their thought process. Because, I've had some people I've worked with who are orthorexic who spend hours in the grocery store just trying to do their grocery shop for the week or for a couple days because they're looking at every food label, obsessing over like, is this one better than this one or whatever.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, it's true. And guys, I think the reason why this is problematic is because it's taking from your quality of life, right? We, as dietitians, we genuinely want you to live a happier and healthier life. And so when the food obsession takes over, it's taking from your happiness. And you could even say it's taking from your mental health. So when we say health, we mean your mental and physical health. We don't just mean one or the other. And I think that's super important. And then also too, extreme restriction, you're probably not absorbing the right nutrients. We really want a balanced diet because you're going to overall be physically healthier probably as well. So it's really, really important. So let's shift gears. I think I don't want to leave people feeling like discouraged, right? Because they might have noticed like, oh wow, like maybe I am a little bit more on that obsessive side, and like I need to like chill a little. Like I need to be okay and just like live my life more. But I also, might be afraid of gaining the weight back or whatever category you fall in. So let's talk about what are some steps that people can take to start to heal their relationship with food, to start to heal their relationship with their body. What are maybe like the top 3 things that you might recommend to someone, whether they were working with you or just the general public? Just what are some things that people can start to do instead?
So one of the big ones is I have people make a list of what are the foods that they're currently avoiding. Right? I mean, what are the foods that you are telling yourself you can't eat for whatever reason? And then write down what that reason is, right? And if you're working with someone, which would be ideal, of course, like let's assume they're working with me or another dietitian, you guys can sort of talk through what are the reasons behind that. But the reason I want you to make this list is I want you to start chipping away at actually eating those foods, right? So it can be one food per week or one food for every couple of weeks, but I want you to chip away at eating those foods. And while you're eating that food, really pay attention to what's enjoyable about it. Like, did you love it? Was it just delicious? Did it make you feel more full than the, salad that you've been eating or whatever that might be? And slowly work through that, because a little bit of it, I say, is practice makes perfect. Like, we have to retrain you to understand that you having a plate of pasta is not a bad thing.
Right.
So definitely working on that as a way to sort of maybe desensitize is the word. Number 2 is with exercise. Just right off the bat, take a day off of exercise, or even just take a full week off if you're in a position that you can do that, and maybe not like in a sport that requires otherwise. But if you can take a full week off of exercise, not do a thing, just do it. Do it for 1 week. And I guarantee you nothing bad is going to happen at the end of that week. And it sounds like a challenge. Some people...
It's a huge challenge. I'm thinking of a client that was recently in our program, and she's at this place where she finally can take rest days without feeling guilty about it. But the resistance on her face, like the whole shift in body language from asking her to take 1 day off. Just one. So if you said that to her for a whole week, I feel like she would have quit. She would have quit. She would have quit the program. She would have hired us. I agree with you. I agree with you. But like, I just sorry. I just had to kind of speak up for like her and those who are listening who probably resonate with that. But I agree with Elaina 1,000%. But it's not going to be comfortable. That's kind of what I'm saying. Like, it's not going to be comfortable.
And it's going to be really, really hard, right? But that's why I say that, because we kind of want to challenge that. And then the last one is and this one might have to be sort of after a potential behavior, but let's say you did eat out, or you ate sweets, or maybe you even binged, or you ate a lot more than you thought you would at night. I want you to wake up the next morning and have a big breakfast.
Yeah.
I don't want you to do this behavior where, oh, I ate so much yesterday, so I'm going to restrict all day today.
Right.
And that might seem like a simple thing to do, but it's actually really hard to follow through with. And it's a really good step to sort of retrain yourself that you don't have to compensate for what happened the night before, or the day before, or whatever.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think there's a lot of fear there, right? Like the fears there is, oh, well, I overate, so if I eat again, then I'm eating too much, right? Or it's like, I think that's the main thing. But so I guess let's transition a little bit. How does somebody know that they're not eating enough or eating too much? Because I think that's the other thing too, is that I think people think they're eating too much when they're not. Mm-hmm. But, so that's where it's like, they're like making themselves feel bad when if they realize like you just actually ate a real meal. Because I think when people think of health, like, or they think they like what's enough, it's like a banana for breakfast, a salad for lunch, and then like their dinner. And then they're like wondering why they're starving. So can we talk about that a little bit?
Well, so to answer one of those questions, you really have to learn what your fullness is, your true fullness. And I think a lot of people also confuse the word fullness with thinking that I'm talking about like way too full, like uncomfortable. There's a big difference between being uncomfortably full and just full and satiated, and really just acknowledging that it's okay and actually good to be full. That means that your body got the food that it needed, and you can carry on for the next few hours without being hungry. So using that as your guide and learning that about your body, as opposed to this is the portion size that you're supposed to eat. Mm-hmm. That's far too often what happens, and why people think they're eating too much, because they'll have a little bit more, rice than what the portion size says it is, and then they're like, oh my God, this is so much food. Mm-hmm. Were you hungry for it? Yeah, so you ate it, and that was fine. Mm-hmm. So really trusting the fullness there is super important.
Yeah, but how do people, help people do that? Because I feel like when people come to us, they're so disengaged from their hunger. So we often have to give them some sort of structure, but within using other things like the hunger scale or whatever. But like, it takes a time. So like, that's the other thing too. I think like for someone who's listening, like, how do they get back in touch with their hunger cues? And when should they expect to like almost have it quote unquote like figured out? Because I think we might get frustrated because it's a process, guys. You're not gonna like automatically be able to know your hunger and fullness like day one.
Yeah, it can take a really long time. I mean, give yourself months, if not years sometimes to figure this out. Mm-hmm. But a really important thing is slowing down when you eat. And, actually there's some research that if you have this opportunity, try to eat with someone. Sometimes people eat more mindfully when they're eating with people as opposed to when they're eating alone in front of the TV. So that can be helpful. But really focusing on slowing down and asking yourself, am I full? Like, let's say you finish half the plate. Take a second, and as silly and as maybe hippy dippy as this seems, be like, okay, how do I feel right now? Am I full? And how you can ask that question is like, well, do I still want food? Not just does this look good, but do I still really want this food? Or am I just finishing it because it's on the plate? And if the answer is you still want the food, keep eating, and then do sort of another check-in. And then what I tell clients a lot of the time is your true fullness should mean that you don't really get hungry again for probably about 3 hours, right? Give or take, but that should mean that you were truly full at that past meal, and then you can sort of learn every meal after that, right? Because if you finish that meal and thought you were full, but then were starving an hour later, then you probably weren't full at that meal. And then you kind of learn over time what that true fullness is. Yeah.
I'm laughing at your comment about like eating with someone because I'm a really fast eater, like very fast. And my boyfriend's daughter is 5 and she is not a fast eater. She is a very slow eater. Like we're almost got to feed her to like a baby, like she's 5. But anyways, all I have to say, she consistently points out to me that I eat so fast, or that like, oh, you're already done, or like, and I'm like, wow, and like my boyfriend doesn't eat that quickly either. So it's something I'm working on, guys. But it definitely helps for paying attention and honoring your hunger. So I completely agree. I think, eating with someone will just make you a little bit more conscious of that. And if you're alone, just don't be on your phone or watching TV, like really try to be fully present. So I think this is great. Oh my goodness. I love this conversation. So, okay. So that's how you know if you're eating enough, right? Is you're listening to your hunger. What about those who might be not eating enough? Like maybe they're losing weight too quickly. Like what are those signs and symptoms of that?
Yeah, there's kind of a lot. So some of the big ones are gut issues. That tends to go overlooked a lot. And I talk about that a lot on social media. But if you're feeling persistently bloated, and I mean like all of the time after almost every meal, that's actually usually a good indicator that you're not eating enough. What's happening there is that your body's not getting in enough food. So your gut quite literally responded to that and slowed down. So then when you do eat, you feel bloated or constipated or things like that. Now, what's tricky about that, and it's a little bit of I don't know if the word catch-22 is good, but is people think that means they're eating too much when really they're not. This all happened from not eating enough.
Right. Or not eating enough variety too.
Correct. Yeah. So that's a big one, is the bloating. Other things are like feeling cold all of the time. That can mean that you've either lost weight too quickly or maybe even lost too much weight, especially other things about like hair, skin, and nails. If your hair's falling out, your nails really aren't growing, your skin seems dry or even like more pale compared to your normal complexion, that can all be signs that you're not taking in enough. The other thing is actually a loss of your hunger cues entirely. Some people will tell me that they just can't eat when I'm expecting them to because they're not hungry for it. But the reason they're not hungry is similar to the gut's response, right? Like you stopped getting hungry because you either ignored it for long enough or whatever happened and your body adapted and stopped sending that ghrelin, that hunger hormone, to tell you that you're hungry.
Yeah. When you do testing on site, I'm curious, when you're looking at their metabolism, can you look specifically at like their leptin and ghrelin? I don't even know if that's possible. I wasn't sure.
No, that's a blood test. So we can't, but I think it's probably expensive. I'm not sure, but you probably could go somewhere and get those tested.
Yeah. No, I was just curious. But yeah. And then kind of just to reiterate, because I think it's important, those symptoms that you just described, the brittle nails, the skin, the hair, it can happen even if you're in the quote unquote overweight category, right? I just want you to say it. I just feel like people are tired of me saying it, and I need you to just remind people that doesn't mean that you're emancipated.
Those things that I said, the gut stuff, hair, skin, nails, feeling cold, literally all of the above, can be at any weight, shape, size, anything, right? It could even be the case where you think you're eating enough and you don't think you're restricting that much. But if you're experiencing those things, that's your body telling you that you're not eating enough.
Yeah.
But yes, it can happen at any size. It can happen in people in smaller bodies, larger bodies, all across the spectrum.
Yeah. So, oh my God, this has been so good. So, all right. Is there anything we didn't talk about today that you feel like we should share with the listeners, or anything recently on your mind? Anything you recently argued on TikTok?
What have I recently argued on TikTok? She's
like not afraid to duet. Like she's not afraid. I don't know if you guys are familiar with TikTok, but like you could like duet people that like just put out ridiculous claims and like really call them out on it. Like it's hard for me to do that. I did that one time with like the jaw shut thing, because like that was clearly ridiculous. Like they're always clearly ridiculous, but that was just like another level. Like, so I was like, all right, I can do this because it's like obvious to everyone. No one's going to come at me like arguing. And if they do, you're sick in the head. So, but like, I don't know, like you're just not afraid to just do whoever and just be like, actually, no, that's a lie. Like, I'll think like that's not true. But like, I don't have as much bravery as you to go up and actually like talk about why it's not true. So I just want to say thank you. Like, thank you for sticking up for other RDs that like really want to do that, but just like aren't quite there yet. They just don't have the guts yet to do it. So thanks.
Oh, of course. I mean, but that's what I was going to say is that's what we're seeing on TikTok, right? Most people don't actually know where to get their nutrition information. So you having a podcast is amazing, right? Because the more good information we can put out there, the better. But a lot of people don't know where to get it. And then when they do, they go to social media, right? Yeah. And so when we see all of this stuff flooding on Instagram and TikTok that's frankly bad information, we've got to have some people out there saying otherwise, that like, don't listen to this next detox thing, that whatever.
Yeah. No, it's so true. Well, thank you for all that you do. Thank you for being here. One more time, where can people find you, connect with you, ask you questions? Just say things.
Yeah, TikTok, Elaina Efird. Instagram, EP Efird. Instagram, I respond to DMs. TikTok, I turn them off because there was just too much happening there. So if you do want to like ask a specific question or anything like that, Instagram's the way to go.
Yeah, I think I'm not newish to TikTok. I'm not like I'm actually newish to trying. Let's just put it that way. But isn't it that only if you follow and they follow you back that you can do DMs, or is there a way to, or is it mine's just like off and I don't want to turn it on, but I'm just curious. Like, I just thought that was how it was set up. And I was like, that's why I love TikTok, because like people can't message me if I don't want them to.
Well, that's how I have it set up now, where it's just friends can DM me.
Oh, so I guess there's a way you can change it. I didn't know that.
Or somehow it was on like anybody could, and it was just getting a little absurd. So.
Yeah, no, it's crazy. Especially because it's so easy to go viral on TikTok. Like, how many followers do you have?
I think like 215,000.
It's a lot. That's a lot. So yeah, I would turn off my DMs too for that. That's crazy. That's crazy. Awesome. All right. Well, thank you guys. Thank you for being here, Elaina. This was a great conversation. For those listening, if you enjoyed the episode, take a screenshot of it. Tag me on Instagram at @tips_with_Tony with an I. Tag Elaina. Definitely give her a follow on all platforms. Let us know what you thought. And if you're not subscribed to the podcast, definitely hit that subscribe button. A new episode comes out every Tuesday and Thursday. And when you're subscribed, you don't miss a beat. All right, that is it from us today. Thank you so much for listening. I'm Tony Marinucci, a registered dietitian, helping you get healthy one bite at a time.